The cafeteria sat on the ground floor of the old military hospital, tucked away from the noise of the city. It was a place most people passed through without thinking, just a stop between appointments, shifts, and long days. The smell of weak coffee mixed with warm food hung in the air. Plates clinked softly. A television on the wall played the news, but no one really watched it. Near the window, a woman in her early 30s slowly made her way inside. Her movements were careful, measured. One hand carried a food tray. The other rested lightly on a metal walking aid. Below her knee on one side, there was nothing. The empty space was hidden under neatly pressed trousers. But it shaped the way she moved, the way people looked at her, and the way she felt inside. She paused for a moment after entering, letting her eyes scan the room. It wasn't crowded, but every table had at least one person. Nurses sat together, talking quietly. A couple of visitors leaned close to elderly patients. A young man in uniform laughed with a friend, unaware of how loud his voice sounded in the calm space. The woman felt that familiar tightening in her chest. It came every time she entered a place like this. Not fear exactly, more like a reminder. A reminder that she was no longer who she used to be. A reminder that her body told a story before she ever opened her mouth. She adjusted her grip on the tray and moved forward. Each step took effort, though she had learned to hide it well. Months of training had taught her how to walk without showing pain, how to keep her face steady even when her muscles burned. Still, the weight of people's glances pressed on her more than the missing limb ever did. Some noticed her and quickly looked away, embarrassed at being caught staring. Others looked too long, their faces filled with curiosity or pity. A few didn't look at all, locked into their own worlds. She almost preferred that dot. She reached an empty space at a table near the middle of the room. Just as she was about to sit, she realized the chair wasn't placed well. Pulling it out would mean twisting awkwardly, risking a stumble. Her heart beat faster. Small things like this could feel huge. She took a breath and adjusted the chair carefully. No one offered help. She didn't expect them to. She had learned not to dot. As she finally sat down, she felt the familiar wave of exhaustion roll over her. It wasn't just physical. It was the tiredness of always being strong, always pretending things were easier than they were. She placed the tray in front of her and stared at the food without touching it. Around her, conversations continued. Life moved on. She remembered a time when places like this felt different. Back then, she had walked into rooms with confidence, shoulders back, steps firm. She had been part of something bigger, something that gave her purpose. Uniform pressed, boots polished, mind focused. She had believed she understood sacrifice. She had believed she was ready. Now, sitting in the cafeteria, she wondered when exactly everything had changed. There wasn't one single moment. It was more like a series of small cracks that slowly spread until the whole picture looked different. She picked up her fork, then put it down again, across the room, near the far wall. An older janitor pushed a cleaning cart slowly from table to table. His movements were unhurried, almost gentle. He wiped surfaces with care, not rushing, not cutting corners. His uniform was faded from years of washing. His shoes were worn, but clean that most people didn't notice him. They stepped around him without a word, sometimes leaving crumbs and spills behind without a second thought. He didn't seem to mind. He had learned long ago how to exist quietly. The woman noticed him without fully knowing why. Maybe it was the calm way he moved. Or maybe it was because he reminded her of someone from another time, another place. Someone who had taught her that dignity wasn't about rank or recognition. She watched as he finished cleaning a table near the window and leaned slightly on the cart, taking a short break. He looked tired. Not the tiredness of a long day only, but the tiredness that came from years of doing work few people respected. She looked back down at her tray. Eating alone wasn't new to her. Since returning home, loneliness had become a familiar companion. Friends didn't know what to say anymore. Family tried, but they couldn't fully understand. Conversations often ended in silence, heavy and uncomfortable. She had learned to keep things light, to smile when needed, to say she was doing fine. But inside, questions stayed unanswered. Who was she now? What was she supposed to do with the rest of her life? How did she move forward when part of her felt stuck in the past? She took a small bite of food, chewing slowly. It tasted bland. A sudden laugh from another table made her flinch. Her body reacted before her mind could catch up. She hated that. She hated how sounds could pull her back to places she didn't want to revisit. She forced herself to breathe, grounding herself in the present. A cafeteria. A chair. A tray. She was safe. Still, her hands shook slightly. She noticed a couple of people at a nearby table whispering. She couldn't hear the words, but she knew the look. She had seen it many times. A mix of curiosity and discomfort. Maybe they were talking about her leg. Maybe about the way she walked. Or maybe they weren't talking about her at all, and her mind was filling in the gaps. Either way, the feeling was the same dot. She pushed her tray away, appetite gone. She considered leaving, but the thought of standing up and walking out under watchful eyes felt exhausting. So she stayed. The janitor moved again, slowly making his way toward a small corner table. When he finished, he sat down with a simple meal from his own bag. No one joined him. No one ever did. The woman glanced at the empty seat across from him. The thought came quietly, almost shy. She dismissed it at first. It wasn't her place. People like him probably preferred to be left alone. And besides, she didn't want to bother anyone. But the thought returned. She looked around the room again. No one was looking at her now. Everyone was busy with their own lives. The empty seat across from the janitor seemed to wait. Her heart beat faster, not from fear this time, but from uncertainty. Reaching out to strangers had never been her strength, even before everything changed. In the past, her role had been clear. Orders given. Orders followed. Conversations had structure. This didn't. She sat still for several seconds, arguing with herself in silence. Finally, she made a decision. She gathered her tray, steadied herself, and stood up. A few heads turned. She ignored them. Each step toward the corner table felt heavier than the last, but she kept going. The janitor looked up as she approached. His eyes were calm, observant. He didn't look surprised. He didn't stare at her leg. He simply looked at her face. She stopped beside the table, suddenly aware of how close she was. Words caught in her throat. For a brief moment, she considered turning around and going back. Instead, she spoke. Her voice was soft, but steady. "Yes," she said. "I will." She hesitated, then added, "Thank you for being here." He stood up slowly. "Thank you for sitting down." As she stood, a man from another table approached them, middle-aged, hesitant. "Excuse me," the man said, clearing his throat. "I just wanted to say, it's good to see you here, both of you." The janitor nodded politely. The woman smiled, surprised. "Thank you," she said. The man walked away. Leaving behind a small moment of warmth. She turned back to the janitor. "See," she said softly. "People are watching and learning," he replied. She walked out of the cafeteria a few minutes later, her steps still careful, but her head held a little higher. Behind her, the janitor returned to his cart, his movements steady, purposeful. Neither of them knew exactly what tomorrow would bring, but they both knew this much. They were no longer eating alone. The last day came quietly, without warning. She didn't know it would be the last time she walked into the cafeteria during that hour. If she had known, she might have tried to hold on to the moment longer. But life rarely announces its turning points. They arrive softly, disguised as ordinary days. That morning, her final evaluation ended sooner than expected. The doctor spoke with a gentle firmness and a small smile. Progress had been made. Enough to move forward. Enough to leave this place behind. She nodded, thanked him, and walked out with papers folded neatly in her bag. As she stepped into the hallway, the weight of it all settled on her. Relief mixed with fear. Pride tangled with sadness. This chapter was closing. Without thinking, she turned toward the cafeteria. It was busier than usual. The lunch rush had started early. Voices filled the room. Trays lined the counter. She moved slowly through the crowd, feeling strangely aware of every step, every sound. She looked toward the corner table. It was empty. For a moment, her heart sank. She told herself it was fine. He was probably working, or maybe on a break somewhere else. Still, the emptiness felt heavier than she expected. She picked up a tray and sat down anyway. A few minutes passed. She poked at her food, appetite distant. Just as she was about to give up and leave, she heard the soft roll of wheels behind her. "You're early today," he said. She turned and smiled. "So are you." He parked his cart nearby and sat down across from her, just like always. Nothing dramatic. Nothing said out loud. But they both knew something was different. They ate in silence for a while. Not the comfortable silence they had grown used to, but a thoughtful one. The kind that comes when words are waiting for the right moment. "I'm leaving," she said finally. He didn't look surprised. "I wondered when that would happen." "Today," she added. "This was my last appointment." He nodded slowly. "How do you feel?" She thought about it. "Like I'm standing at the edge of something," she said. "I don't know if it's solid ground or thin air." "That's how new beginnings feel," he said. "Unsteady." She smiled sadly. "I didn't think this place would matter to me." A cafeteria. A table. "And yet," he said. "And yet," she repeated. She looked around the room. The same sounds. The same smells. People eating, talking, leaving. Life going on. "I used to think moving forward meant leaving everything behind," she said. "But now I think it means carrying some things with you." He met her eyes. "That's a good way to see it." She hesitated, then said, "You helped me more than you know." He shook his head gently. "You did the hard part," he said. "I just listened." "That mattered," she replied. "More than advice. More than encouragement. Just being seen." He looked down at his hands for a moment. "I didn't know I needed that too," he admitted. "Until you sat down." She felt a lump rise in her throat. "I don't want this to be goodbye," she said. "It doesn't have to be," he replied. "Goodbyes don't erase what was shared." She nodded. "Still, it feels like an ending." "It's a pause," he said. "Not an ending." She smiled. "You always know how to say it." He chuckled softly. "I've had practice." They finished their meals slowly, neither rushing. When she stood up, she adjusted her balance like she always did. But there was a confidence there now that hadn't been before. She picked up her tray, then paused. "Before I go," she said, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why did you answer me the way you did that first day?" She asked. "When I asked to sit here." He thought for a moment. "Because I remembered what it felt like to believe I had to ask permission to exist," he said. "And I didn't want you to feel that." She blinked back tears. "I won't forget that." "Good," he said. "Then it did its job." They stood there for a moment, facing each other. No hugs, No promises. Just understanding. As she turned to leave, something unexpected happened. A few people nearby began to clap. Softly at first, then a little louder. Not everyone, just a handful. She froze, confused. A woman spoke up. "Thank you," she said simply. Others nodded. Some smiled. Some looked away. Emotional. The woman felt her face warm. This wasn't the attention she used to fear. This felt different, honest, human. She nodded once, in return. Then she walked out of the cafeteria. Behind her, the janitor stood quietly, hands resting on his cart. He watched until she disappeared through the doors. The room slowly returned to normal. Conversations resumed. Plates clinked. The moment passed, but something stayed. Weeks later, the table was still there. People sat at it. People left it. No one knew its story. The janitor continued his work. Same cart, same pace, same care. Sometimes he noticed people sitting together who might not have before. A nurse and a patient. A visitor and a cleaner. A stranger asking, "Is this seat taken?" And sometimes he smiled. Somewhere else, the woman moved forward into a new life. One filled with challenges, yes, but also with quiet strength. When she felt unsure, she remembered that small table, that simple question, that gentle reply. She no longer asked permission to take up space. And in a busy world that often forgets to slow down, two ordinary people had changed each other's lives, not with grand gestures, but with kindness, respect, and a shared table. "No one said something like that to me since I got back," she continued. "It's always questions, or silence, or that look." "The look?" he asked. "The one that says, 'I don't know what to say to you,'" she replied. He sighed. "People mean well. They're just uncomfortable with pain they can't fix." She laughed softly. "I don't need fixing." "No," he agreed. "You don't." They sat quietly for a moment. Outside the window, people passed by, carrying bags, talking on phones, moving forward without thinking about it. "I still have dreams," she said suddenly. "About before?" he asked. "About everything," she said. "Sometimes I'm running. Sometimes I'm standing still while everyone else moves." "And when you wake up?" "I feel tired," she admitted. "Like I've already lived a whole day." He nodded. "Healing is work," he said. "Invisible work. People don't clap for it, but it's real." She smiled at that. "You should be a teacher." He chuckled. "Life already taught me plenty." She finished her meal and leaned back slightly. "You know," she said, "I used to believe strength meant never needing help." "And now?" he asked. "And now I think strength might mean sitting down at the right table," she said. He smiled. "That's a lesson it took me years to learn." She looked around the cafeteria. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Not the job, the past." "Regret?" he repeated. "No, I miss parts of it. I miss who I was. But I don't regret becoming who I am." She let that sink in. "Some days," he added, "I feel small. Other days, I feel steady. I've learned that steady is enough." She nodded slowly. "I want that. You'll get there," he said. "Not because someone tells you how. Because you keep showing up." She stood up carefully, adjusting her balance. "Same time tomorrow?" she asked. He raised an eyebrow. "You planning on making this a habit?" "Maybe," she said. "If that's okay." "It's more than okay," he replied. As she walked away, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Not happiness, not excitement, but grounding. Like her feet were touching something solid again. Behind her, the janitor watched her go, then returned to wiping tables. Around him, people came and went, unaware of the quiet exchange that had taken place. But for both of them, the cafeteria was no longer just a room with tables and chairs. It was a place where two lives had crossed, and neither would walk quite the same afterward. She found herself planning her schedule around that quiet hour in the cafeteria, not because she was hungry, but because she knew someone would be there who didn't ask questions she couldn't answer, someone who didn't rush her story or try to wrap it in comforting words, someone who simply listened. That morning had been harder than the others. A doctor spoke kindly but firmly about limits, about what her body could and could not do anymore, about patience, about accepting change. She nodded through it all, the way she had learned to do, but inside she felt that familiar sinking feeling, the one that made her feel smaller than she wanted to be. By the time she reached the cafeteria, her shoulders ached from holding herself together. He was already there, pushing his cart slowly along the wall. When he saw her, he paused, then parked the cart neatly to one side. "You look tired," he said as she approached. She gave a short laugh. "I am." They sat down without ceremony. No greeting beyond a nod, no polite distance. Just two people sharing a table like it was the most natural thing in the world. She stared at her food for a moment before speaking. "Do you ever get angry?" she asked suddenly. He looked at her, surprised but not uncomfortable. "Yes," he said, "less now than before." "But yes," she nodded. "I feel angry all the time lately. Not at anyone in particular, just at how things are." "That's allowed," he said. "People don't like it," she replied. "They want me to be grateful, or inspiring, or quiet." He leaned back slightly. "Gratitude and anger can exist together," he said. "Anyone who says otherwise hasn't lost much." She felt a tightness loosen in her chest. "Sometimes I feel guilty for being angry," she admitted, "like I should just be thankful I'm alive." "Being alive doesn't erase what you lost," he said. "It just gives you time to learn how to live with it." She took a deep breath. "I don't know how yet." "You don't have to know today," he replied. They ate in silence for a while. The cafeteria was busier than usual. A group of visitors spoke loudly near the entrance. A nurse rushed past with a phone pressed to her ear. Trays scraped. Chairs moved at a nearby table. A young child stared openly at her leg. His mother noticed and quickly pulled him closer, whispering something sharp. The woman felt the old reflex rise, the urge to shrink, to disappear. Before she could look away, the janitor spoke. Not to the child, not to the mother, to her. "Do you know what people notice first about me?" he asked quietly. She glanced at him. "Your job?" He nodded. "They see the uniform, the cart. They assume I have no past, no story, just this moment." She followed his gaze. "And you?" "I see hands that shake sometimes," he said. "Eyes that look tired. People carrying things you can't see." She swallowed. "I don't want to be the thing people remember," she said. "The injury, the difference, you won't be," he said calmly. "Not to the people who matter." She looked at him. "How do you know?" "Because you're more than what happened to you," he replied. "And the ones worth keeping will see that." Her eyes stung, but she didn't turn away. After a moment, she said, "I used to be the one people leaned on. Now I feel like I'm always the one being careful." "That's a hard shift," he said, "going from strong to cautious." "I don't feel strong anymore," she admitted. "Strength changes shape," he said. "It doesn't disappear." She thought about that, about how strength once meant endurance, speed, obedience. Now it meant waking up, showing up, asking to sit down. "Yesterday," she said, "I tried to walk without the aid for a few steps, just to see. And," he asked. "I fell," she said plainly. "Not badly, but enough to remind me." He nodded, no judgment in his eyes. "And did you get back up?" "Yes." "Then you're stronger than you think." She smiled faintly. "You always find a way to say things like that," he shrugged. "Experience, She leaned forward slightly. "Do you ever talk about your past with anyone else?" "No," he said, "not really." "Why me?" she asked. He met her gaze. "Because you asked," he said, "and because you listen." She let that sit between them. Around them, people began to notice the pair more openly now. Not just glances, longer looks. Some curious, some thoughtful. A woman walking past slowed down, then smiled gently at the soldier before moving on. The woman noticed it and felt something new. Not discomfort. Recognition. "It's strange," she said. "I used to feel like everyone was watching me. Now it feels like they're seeing me." He nodded. "There's a difference." She finished her meal and pushed the tray aside. "I have therapy in a bit," she said. "I don't want to go." He smiled softly. "You'll go anyway." See, the janitor didn't answer right away. He looked at the woman standing beside the table, then at the empty chair across from him. His face showed no surprise, no discomfort. Just quiet attention, like he was truly seeing her, not rushing to a response. For a moment, the cafeteria noise seemed to fade for her. She became aware of how she was standing, how the tray felt heavier than it should, how her leg pressed slightly against the chair. Doubt crept in. Maybe she shouldn't have come. Maybe she had misread the moment. Then he spoke. "You don't have to ask," he said gently. "This table doesn't belong to me." His voice was calm, steady, without any sharp edge. Not loud enough to draw attention, but clear enough that she heard every word. She blinked, caught off guard. I didn't want to interrupt," she said. He gave a small smile. "You're not interrupting anything." She nodded and slowly lowered herself into the chair. He waited until she was settled before returning his attention to his meal. There was no awkward shifting, no long silence filled with discomfort. It felt surprisingly natural, like this was something that had always been meant to happen. She placed her tray on the table and exhaled softly. She hadn't realized she had been holding her breath. For a few seconds, they ate in silence. The quiet between them wasn't heavy. It was the kind that allowed space to breathe. She glanced at him again. Up close, she noticed small details. Lines around his eyes that suggested years of sun and work. Hands rough but steady. The way he chewed slowly, thoughtfully, as if he didn't rush through anything anymore. "Thank you," she said finally, "for letting me sit here." He paused and looked at her again. This time, his eyes held something deeper. "Like I said," he replied, "you don't need permission." She felt something shift inside her chest. It wasn't pride. It wasn't sadness. It was something closer to relief that they returned to their meals. She took a bite and realized the food tasted better than before. Not great, but better. After a while, he spoke again. "Long day?" She almost laughed. It was such a simple question, yet no one had asked her that in a long time without meaning something else, without trying to fix her or feel sorry for her. "Yes," she said honestly. "Long year, actually." He nodded, as if that made perfect sense. Those can be heavier than the long days. She looked at him, surprised. "You sound like you know that feeling." "I do," he said. "Most people do, at some point. Some just hide it better." She smiled faintly. "I used to think I was good at hiding things. And now?" "Now I'm not so sure," she admitted. He took a sip of water and placed the cup down carefully. "Hiding takes energy," he said. "Sometimes more than facing what's there." She let his words sink in. They weren't spoken like advice. Just a thought, shared without expectation. She hesitated, then said, "People look at me like I'm fragile. Or like I'm brave. Sometimes both. But they rarely talk to me like I'm just normal." "That can be lonely," he said. "It is," she replied quietly. He nodded once, slowly. "I've been invisible for a long time," he said. People walk past me all day. Some don't even see me. Others see the uniform and think they know my whole story." She glanced at his faded work clothes. "And they don't?" "No," he said. "They see the job, not the person." She felt a strange comfort in that. Not because he suffered too, but because he understood what it meant to be reduced to one thing. They ate for a while longer, exchanging small remarks about the food, the weather, the hospital. Nothing deep, but nothing forced either. Then she asked, "How long have you worked here?" He smiled slightly. "Long enough to know which tables wobble and which ones don't." She chuckled. The sound surprised her. It had been a while since laughter came easily. "And you?" He asked, "Are you here often?" "Lately," she said. "Physical therapy, checkups, paperwork." She shrugged. "A lot of waiting rooms." He nodded with understanding. "Waiting can be harder than working." She looked at him again, curiosity growing. "You say things like someone who's lived a few lives." He thought about that for a moment. "Maybe I have," he said. "Just not all at once." She wanted to ask more, but she didn't want to push. Instead, she said, "I didn't expect today to feel like this." "Like what?" he asked. "Lighter," she replied. "I walked in here feeling heavy, like everyone could see what I've lost. And now?" "And now," she said slowly, "I feel like I'm just a person having lunch." He smiled. Not a big smile, just enough to show that he understood. "That's a good thing to be," he said. "Just a person." She nodded Dot across the room. A few people glanced over at their table. Some looked surprised, some curious. A woman in a nurse's uniform paused briefly, then returned to her conversation. A man at another table looked, then looked away. The woman noticed, but for once it didn't bother her. She wasn't alone. She wasn't performing strength or inviting pity. She was simply sitting, eating, talking. She finished her meal and wiped her hands with a napkin. "I should probably get going," she said. "Another appointment." He stood as well, pushing his chair in carefully. "Then I won't keep you." She hesitated. "I'm glad I came over," she said. "I almost didn't." "I'm glad you did," he replied. She stood up slowly, steadying herself. As she adjusted her tray, she looked at him and said, "You know, when I asked to sit here, I expected a yes or no." "And you got something else," he said. "Yes," she said softly. "I did." She turned to leave, then paused. "Maybe I'll see you around?" "I'm usually here," he said. "Same time. Same cart." She smiled. "Then I'll remember this table doesn't belong to anyone." He nodded. "It belongs to whoever needs it." She walked away, her steps still careful, still measured, but her shoulders felt lighter. Behind her, the janitor watched her go for a moment, then returned to his work. The cafeteria noise filled the space again. Plates clinked. Voices rose and fell. Life continued. Dot, but for both of them, something had quietly shifted. Dot, and I share this table. She didn't expect to come back the next day, but somehow she did. The decision wasn't planned. It just happened. After her appointment, instead of heading straight outside, her feet carried her toward the cafeteria again. The same smell of coffee greeted her. The same low hum of voices. For a brief moment, she wondered if yesterday had been a one-time thing, something that wouldn't repeat. Dot. Then she saw him. He was near the window, wiping down the same table as before. His movements were steady, familiar. When he noticed her, he didn't wave or call out. He simply nodded, like someone acknowledging a quiet understanding. She felt herself relax. She picked up a tray and moved slowly, carefully, just as she always did. Some people glanced at her, some didn't. That hadn't changed. What had changed was how she felt about it. The weight was still there, but it didn't press as hard. When she reached the table, she didn't ask this time. She just sat down. He finished cleaning and took the seat across from her, setting his meal down. "Looks like you remembered the table," he said. She smiled. "I did." They ate for a few minutes without speaking. The silence felt comfortable, like it had yesterday. She found herself breathing easier, not bracing for anything. "You seem different today," he said at last. "Different how?" she asked. "Lighter," he replied. "Like someone who slept a little better." She thought about that. "Maybe," she said. "Or maybe I just didn't feel like running away today." He nodded. "That takes courage, too." She looked at him. "You keep saying things like that," she said. "Like you know exactly what this feels like." He didn't answer right away. He took a bite of his food, chewed slowly, then set his fork down. "I wasn't always a janitor," he said. She waited, sensing that this wasn't something he shared often. "A long time ago," he continued, "I wore a uniform, too. Different from yours, maybe. Different time. Different place. But the feeling was the same. Belonging to something bigger than yourself." Her attention sharpened. "You served?" "Yes," he said simply. She studied his face, seeing him differently now. "What happened?" He gave a small shrug. "Life happened. An injury. A family that needed me. A system that moved on." She nodded slowly. "That sounds familiar. When I came back," he said, "people thanked me. They shook my hand. Then they forgot. Jobs didn't wait. Bills didn't care. And suddenly, the uniform that meant everything didn't mean much at all." She felt a knot form in her chest. "That's exactly how it feels," she said quietly. "One day you're needed. The next day you're just in the way." He looked at her with understanding. "You're not in the way," he said. "You're just between chapters." She swallowed. "It doesn't always feel like that." "No," he agreed. "It rarely does." She hesitated, then asked, "Did losing the uniform hurt more than losing anything else?" He thought about it. "It hurt because I didn't know who I was without it," he said. "I kept waiting for someone to tell me what to do next. That order never came." "What did you do?" she asked. "I worked," he said. "Whatever I could find. This job wasn't what I dreamed of, but it gave me something important. Routine, purpose, a way to stand on my own again." She looked down at her hands. "I'm scared of what comes next," she admitted. "I don't know where I fit anymore." "That fear doesn't go away overnight," he said. "But it changes shape. It gets quieter when you stop fighting it." She nodded, feeling tears press behind her eyes. She blinked them away. She didn't want pity. She didn't feel pitied here. "Yesterday," she said, "when you said I didn't need permission, that stayed with me." He smiled faintly. "Good,"